Namaste. Welcome, beautiful souls. This is going to be a really sweet video. This is the final video in a series where I have been discussing all of the cards in the Tarot de Marseille, and this is only the beginning or the recommencement of my love and interest of these cards. And for Christmas, I have ordered 2 new decks from Marco Benedetti, and this is just, I want to thank all of you who have been a part of this journey. It's really, really been something. Today, I'm going to talk to you about the Fool, and just hopefully we can wind this up in a really beautiful way, and then designate a time during the week where I will do readings with Tarot de Marseille. It's not something that I want to put on the back burner ever again. And before I get started today, I'm going to start by reading from this absolutely lovely book. I have shared this a few times. This is the book by Letitia Barbier. In her book, The Fool is near the beginning, not after the World card. If you are looking for new moon readings today, I'm not doing new moon readings today. I didn't do them yesterday. I did. So there is a broadcast that is only shared in my Facebook group, which is linked in the description box below if you're looking for some guidance about new moon readings. Also, this is the final day for my Black Friday sale, and there is a new moon class in the shop on my website. It's a very simple course that it's sort of you could go through it a couple of times and really build your new moon practice. And with this discount ordering today, it's really inexpensive, less than $20. So that might be something that you want to do. This is a powerful day, new moon in Sagittarius, the way that we have had a lot of influence from external planets. And I want to invite you to move intentionally and slowly on this day. And I think it's quite ironic that the Fool card is the card of discussion for today. So let me begin in the words of Letitia Barbier. Oh, there's so many good things. I'm going to just start reading. Second paragraph. In the narrative sequence formed by the major arcana, the Fool is the tohu bohu, the primitive, unshaped energy where all things emerge from and return, the alpha and the omega. Associated with the number 0 or 22, our Fool is sort of a wild card, a dynamic alpha and omega tightrope walk through the symbolic tale of the trump cards. Our Fool is the prima materia of the alchemists, the raw substance whose successive encounter with archetypal figures of the cards will allow him to find shape and lead him to transcendence. Like a commencement clap, a big bang, he attracts our attention, sucking us into the parade of archetypes we are about to meet. In the Cherokee Fine dalla Torre, which I do have on the table, let me just put this to the side while I read here. We catch him in a jig, dancing simultaneously, playing the flute while beating drums. In the Solabusca, our motto plays bagpipe, a musicality and enthusiasm for wind instruments that might find echoes in the etymology of the name Fool, a word derived from the Latin folis, used to describe bellows and empty leather bags. In this context, one can read pejorative commentary based on the fact that the head of our protagonist is hollow, inflated with air, windy, empty vessels that make most noise, as one might say. I really like the dialogue, the description. This is one of her longer descriptions of major arcana in this book. And such a gorgeous collection of cards that she offers here. Now, I do not have any of the earliest decks, and because I don't have them, this is something I certainly want to bring into my library for a deeper study. And honestly, this is one card that I am so ready to dive deeper into study. And I really appreciated David's discussion as well, though also quite brief, because there are so many things to consider in this card. And something that I don't want to forget, let me just transition and put my cards on the table. Hi Dee, hi Aria, welcome. Do you remember back when I was talking about the Hanged Man card? And some of the considerations with that card in its location on the outskirts of town, and how people of questionable heritage, occupation, actions were often hung on the outskirts of town, and they were hung in a way that wild animals could get them, because wild animals lived on the outskirts of town. And as I was reading and contemplating, well, is this a dog? Is this a lynx? Is this a domestic cat? I'm thinking about the hanged man hanging on the outskirts of town, having wildlife jumping up and claiming his life. And there are so many linking cards. I really appreciated the number of references, and I linked a couple of websites below too that I was perusing this morning, of the connection between this card and the devil, which I'm not sure is something I have considered before, and that's definitely worth a deeper study. And I just want to pause there and say that perhaps one of the things I will do is in the new year is to go back, maybe in the same time slot, to go back and to contrast, to compare some of these cards that are definitely worthy of comparison. And I'll probably have to go back and review this series and make some notes and plan for that. But I think that would be really good for my own study, and I know some of you would chime in there as well too. So this range, vast range of association here, and the choices that have been made in various decks to leave the rear end and the male genitalia completely unclothed, to having the jester, the fool, with pants of some form on, whether they are torn or not. So there's quite a range of that. So we can look at the animals, we can look at the clothing, we can look at the face, the body language, the position of this particular court, which is really odd, and that does connect us with the death card, because that body language in a lot of the cards, the body position is exactly the same as in the devil, and the scythe mirrors the walking stick. And it's so interesting that the walking stick disappears in the Waite-Smith Tarot, and I need to kind of revisit that. Very interesting about the discussion of the spoon, the long spoon that holds the pouch on the back of the knapsack, and how that spoon may have been used in the entertainment, in the comedy routine, quite literally as a slap stick. And so that was really, really interesting. The connection to music and sound and the air element through that, just that little bit I read about bagpipes and wind instruments is kind of also very interesting. So let's look at these cards, look at some of the nuances, the differences among them, and just kind of let this unfold. And there are, I believe, we could go in, well, let's just look at a couple here that are all right. I'll do my best to name these decks because I haven't had some of these on the table for a while. This is the Usi deck, and you can see the knapsack here is tied up. We're looking at the peach shape, the bottom shape that appears in a lot of these cards, and you can see that this particular Fool has kind of a different body position. Maybe that's where I'll start. And there is most definitely a cat, not a lynx or a dog. And here we do have a hint to the Waite Smith energy as well, too, with the edge of a cliff. And there is no indication of edges of cliffs in the Tarot de Marseille. The Fool is definitely walking out somewhere outside of town. Definitely in the countryside. There's no buildings. There's either green or golden landscape that you're witnessing here. So why would in some of these cards the Fool not have pants on? And there's a lot of ways we could actually work with that in a contemporary tarot reading, and in others it would appear as if the pants are torn. So let's leave the decks that have complete clothing sort of till later. And I think rightly so, there have been a lot of questions. It almost looks as if you're looking at the right leg of the Fool, that the pants themselves are a skin color. They have been torn, and underneath there is some more green fabric of some sort that is revealed. So it's kind of bizarre. And then we see this leaf thing, or maybe that's another tear, or that also sometimes is interpreted as a wound that could be, the skin could have been damaged from the wild animal. And in the Noble Tarot, this really, if you do look at the claws and the ears, this most definitely does not look like a dog. And I appreciate so many things he said. I'm sorry, talking about J.M. David, especially when he was talking about the notion of pain and comedy, and how the current day clown, excuse me, oh, okay, the current day clown, or the clown through history, I'm thinking of mimes as well too, carries so much pain, and this levity, making fun of this, shall we call it, idiot who forgot to wear their pants or didn't replace torn pants, subjects themselves to this torture from an animal that is following behind them. It's I don't know. It's really, really odd. I see your comments there, and I'm going to highlight them and bring all that in as well too. The range of interpretations is really interesting, and you could also extend that to just the general vulnerability of the placement, the position of this card. And I think about myself as a young woman traveling the world in my early 20s, how many times I found myself in this position, stupidly, yet also tremendously courageously, choosing not to stay in the, let's say, I'm thinking of the Fool here, choosing not to stay in the slums, in a life of poverty, but rather take that out, at least go out and see the world and do something, live life, rather than languishing in poverty at home. Okay. Thanks for that, Dee. All right, so let's go to Arya's comment. Fools traditionally were assumed to be the folks we moderns would call mentally ill, homeless people. A few would be adventurous mavericks, but most were truly unable to cope. Yeah, and it's really hard for me because right now I am working with Monday to Friday. I mentioned this in a couple of videos. Like, I work with children with special needs ranging in age from 13 to 19 years old. And in the past, these children would have been shunned and hidden away, but they're part of a program within a public high school, and they are seen every day. And it's really interesting to observe how other students respond to them in classes, when they're out in classes, in the hallway, in the cafeteria. And some of them do have tremendous cognitive deficits. Also very interesting to observe the response of the parents when they come into the school. It's really, really fascinating. So when we think about the rejection of those with physical disabilities or cognitive deficits, in some ways we've come a long way, but in others I'm not so sure. And then this, when all of us are certainly connected to the tarot through our intuition and insight and clairvoyancy, clairaudiency. And I'm sure each of us have people in our purview who would call us mad, and we choose not to engage with those people for their lack of awareness and connection. So there's so many ways we can definitely connect to these cards. Instead of a wound, it could be a feather, which symbolizes foolishness, and there's that airy element again. Slapstick comedy is really violent, and the audience laughs at people getting hurt. Yeah, and I have a hard time with a lot of comedy, even contemporary comedy acts. And there have been some TV shows that have attempted to capture this older style of entertainment, and it really is, well, let's think about some of the horror stories around the motion picture The Wizard of Oz, and what happened, and how the community of little people was contacted and used. I'm sorry, I don't know the politically correct term for dwarfism. How they were treated on set, and I know there were a lot of issues in that film. And some of that came out as well too in Game of Thrones. So is it possible that this card could strike a chord and take on a meaning that triggers some empathy, compassion, memory, or maybe even a situation where one acted inappropriately in terms of somebody who was outcast? Yes, slapstick is such a strong tradition through the centuries, and many normals would often relish the opportunity to laugh at the weird guys. Harsh, isn't it? Lydia-Ann, long time no see. Welcome. Hello, it's foolish to carry a purse of coins on a shoulder instead of near the belt. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I did see, let's see, not in that one. You can't, I know you can't see my pointer. Make it my pointer. Not here. Here. This is the Madani Tarot. And I know in other decks as well too, there is gold emanating from the inside of the pouch. And we don't see that in all cases. Certainly we have a gold color here. If you don't know this deck, this is Tarot 23 by Tarot Midnight. All right, I'd like to go through the cards one by one. Fool's Gold. That's so interesting. Wow, look at the Jacques Viavi Tarot. I see a face in the spoon. And I know there is discussion of the, and then we have the donkey ears on the cap. So the cap does vary quite a bit from deck to deck. One of the blogs I listed below, or maybe not, read so many of them the last couple of days, discuss the body position of the Fool. And it does not apply in this one, so let's remove this one. If you note which way the lower body is moving, the upper body generally is in alignment with the upper body. However, the head is turned in an abnormally far direction to the right. And so there is some discussion that this actually is a mask that is turned to the right side of the head for artistic perspective or other reasons. And there are several images in these historical in these books that talk about the more historical decks, the Tarot de Marseille, where the Fool often did wear a mask, and the mask was part of the routine. That's really interesting. Yeah, he could have used it as a puppet. And in that deck, which is the same era as the Noble, the Fool has full pantaloons on, and the cat almost looks as if it's hooded. The head of the cat is colored green. Does it also, is it part of the act, and does it have a cap or a hood of sorts being part of the show? And that's really, it's the only place I've ever seen that. And another thing that does vary, so in the Noble, we do see red shoes, and we see red shoes here. This is the Dodal, Flornoise Dodal. Just looking in the Soprofino here, it almost looks as if there is a shoe on one foot and not on the other. So this silly fool, maybe having being bitten by the dog, lost or jumped out of one shoe. Red shoes here. Red boots. This is the New Choice Tarot de Marseille. So the red pink, so that's a carryover. These almost look like they are skin-colored boots in this deck. Red boots here. So why am I saying this? So red, a symbol of action and intention. Sometimes this really stands out for me in a reading, the color red, and it draws my attention, and it feels like this Fool is very intentional about their movement away from something. And that, for me, is one of the most powerful questions, is what is this Fool leaving? What is this Fool choosing to leave behind? And on a journey like this, I mean, it's very handy if you have a gig you can take on the road. And I'm thinking of people who can take, I don't know, like massage therapy. If you're a tutor, there's certain occupations that travel very well. You can get paid under the table in any country in the world if you have certain skills. And so maybe you could also apply this here. The vagabond energy could very well be a younger person on a gap year, choosing not to go back to school but see the world. I don't know. This is like another possibility. Okay. D. The Fool often spoke truth to power, very brave and dangerous when one is an outsider. In the Gassman Tarot here, I feel the nature of the, and even here in the Jacques Villa V, the nature of the walk, the size of the gait, it feels like it's a good gait, it's a good walk. This person is actually moving. Looks a little more perhaps relaxed here. This is the Noble Tarot hiding underneath. And only in Tarot of the Master, which is hidden below under here, is the Fool going in a different direction. So that one really stands on its own as far as the decks that I have in my library. And I would need to pull out the Devil in Tarot of the Master, as well as some other cards, related cards. Let me get that. It's right here. Did I mention I've ordered? I think I did a couple of new decks. And you know, this also makes me think about Apollo in the Sun card in Tarot of the Master, right? So here's the Fool. Here's the Sun. But that's not what I was looking for. I'm looking for the direction that this card follows. And now I'm getting lost looking at these beautiful cards. Okay. Here is the Limpeso, the hanged one in this deck. And I suppose that this card could be just on the outskirts of town. You kind of see, right? This would be the last building on the outside of the village. But this person looks like they're hung quite high up, like the animals couldn't get to them. Okay, so the death in this deck goes in the same direction as most in Tarot de Marseille. So they're going in opposite directions. Because I know these two cards get contrasted quite a bit. Lydiane, the Fool can be the hermit who decides to socialize again. You know, I've thought about this card in terms of the hermit a lot. And if you have been to India and seen especially in northern India, the wandering sadhus, really there's lots of places along the Ganges River where there are great spiritual gatherings, and the poverty, the life that many of these sadhus live in is really bare bones. And they aren't, I wouldn't say that they are the jester by any means. Well, I mean, we haven't talked about this, the Fool as the pilgrim, or the Fool as the spiritual seeker. So Lydiane's comment just gets me thinking about this. And there's a difference between the hermit and the Fool in a way that it's so hard to describe. There is a lifestyle, a commitment to this lifelong journey of poverty, not having any possessions, And the path that you follow, going from these gatherings to gatherings, and there's kind of a euphoria and a intoxicating energy around many of these gatherings, which feels more deeply connected to the Fool than the Hermit. The Hermit is the one who maybe wanders into a cave in northern India and stays in the cave, and that is it's a long period. It's different. Hi Perry, welcome. Being a free spirit, he could leave town if necessary, walking away and toward fresh fields and new vistas. And like I said earlier, it's very admirable because he doesn't have much. Maybe in his village, he is the village fool, some sort of physical, mental deficit, struggles in some way, and so he bravely chooses to leave instead of being ridiculed in the hometown. Perry, the hermit is very interesting experience in our own unique ways of learning to live without any fears, anxiety, expectations, and plans, open to the mystery with gratitude, love, and reverence. And I think of the hermit and its connection to wandering into the darkness. So maybe that's another difference. The hermit wanders intentionally to face something. This energy feels different. The Fool. Lydiane. Okay, I see the hermit lost in mountain. That explains why I wonder if after a long time of introspection, he could choose to plan a new perspective. Yeah. And I mean, of course, in the Waite-Smith deck, it could very well be that the hermit is in the distance of the Fool card, because you do see those snow-capped mountains in the distance, and the hermit is in those snow-capped mountains. And certainly Waite-Smith, Arthur Waite, would be aware of and known of these kind of traditions in the Himalayas, among other places. Yeah. So what are you in this? What are you moving away from? Why have you chosen to pick up and leave? You know the Sasrabito tarot? I'm going to get it in case you don't have it. I mean, I have a few favorite Fool cards, and there's something about this one that reminds me, and there's actually a few vloggers on YouTube and Facebook who are older, who talk about the experience of being older and choosing to let go of expectations, choosing to embrace their differences, and to find happiness in that freedom. This is the card I was thinking of. It makes me think of whether this is somebody who is ridiculed in their community or town, or this is a person who has just had enough. They've just had enough, and they're going to say, I don't care anymore. I'm going to do this my way. I'm going to live life on that's it. I'm going to live life on my own terms. On the dark side, I guess a fool, totally psychiatric without a sense of reality of a danger. It's extreme, I know. And that also is perception. It really also is perception. I am learning there is somebody in my life and who makes choices that are to me near incomprehensible. And so I observe this. It's not an easy thing. Okay, well, thank you for joining in this conversation. And I'm just going to go through the decks just so you know what cards I have on the table today. Okay, so this is Tarot 23 by Midnight Tarot. This is Renault's restoration of the Tarot Madanier. This is an Usi deck. It's very sort of body deck. I forget what it's called. Anyway, if you look up on the Usi website, and I will link all these decks below later. This is the Soprafino, Il Menengallo Soprafino. And this is Flournoy's restoration, Dodel restoration. Swiss deck, this is a Gassman tarot. I believe Jean-Claude Renault, or that's not the right first name, but Renault restoration. This is Vievi, Flournoy. And this is his Noble. This one came from the Tarot Museum in Italy. It's the Fine dalla Torre. And this is the Il Menengallo Tarot of the Master. And this one is the New Choice Tarot de Marseille. So let me know, if for those of you that are watching the replay, if there's anything in this discussion that has perhaps opened a new way of looking at the Fool, because this is a really complex card and could take your reading in numerous directions. Okay. Also, a request, if you are watching any of these replays, and I came to a point where I said, ooh, we really need to compare these cards. Please make a comment to remind me that this is one that I will revisit in the new year. In the meantime, I will be starting my Advent calendar, broadcasting daily with words of inspiration and sharing favorites. And I had a request actually yesterday to also do my Tarot Card of the Year readings. So I will do that. I've done that for several years in a row now and just need to schedule that in at some point. Okay. Have a lovely rest of your day and thank you all so much for being here. Namaste.